Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special edition of NCOPD Live, hosted by yours truly, Staff Sergeant Hicks, hashtag the professional SGL, coming at you live from Fort Lee, Virginia. Listen, the time has come. We got the subject matter experts in the building. So what we're about to do right now, we're going to go through introductions. Before we even get started with our panel, I have a special guest co-host in the building with me tonight. None other than Master Sergeant Green. He's going to introduce himself and then we'll facilitate as well. Top, what's going on?
What's going on, NCOPD Live? Sergeant Hicks, my brother, thank you for having me on and allowing me to help you out tonight. I'm currently located at JBLM, and today I'm on here to help my brother facilitate some conversation.
Okay, so where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Mulberry, Florida. Mulberry, Florida, a little town called Mulberry, Florida. There ain't nothing there.
Ask you what's the nearest NFL college team?
Mulberry is so small. You hear the joke where they say when you go into town, it says welcome, and when you pass the sign, it says leaving. That's Mulberry.
So they don't have a team, y'all.
We don't. We don't.
I appreciate you joining in with me tonight, Master Sergeant Green. Great to have you here. Sergeant Major Morgan, how you doing?
Hey, fantastic. Good evening, NCOPD Live. Thanks for the opportunity for allowing us to come on here. Hopefully spread some wisdom tonight, put some information out, be a little bit more transparent, right? So I really appreciate being here. So I'm the Senior Army Career Counselor, work under the umbrella of the Army G-1 under Sergeant Major Jefferson at the Pentagon. Work within a directorate referred to as the DMPM, the Directorate of Military Personnel Management, where we handle retention policy and a myriad of other policies that go on that impact directly the enlisted force.
Okay. And where are you originally from?
So I immigrated from England. Military brat.
Okay.
Born at a very early age. And moved over here when I was 10 years old. Immigrated. And now 28 years later, 28 years of service. Only a couple more to go.
So I'm gonna ask you to explain this one. Please do not ask Sergeant Major Morgan about sport.
See, I already knew the trolls were going to start trolling, right? Hey, they do what they do. So Sergeant Delaney, he's also a career counselor. He's up, but right. See, I don't know if you can hear that. My wife's in the background laughing right now.
Okay.
He's up at Rock Island Arsenal, career counselor up there. Great friend of mine. But yeah, when it comes to sports, no, nothing in my memory bank dealing with sports. Ask me about football, baseball, basketball. I'm the wrong one to ask.
Oh wow. Yeah. That's the first one in NCOPD Live. You just made history.
Guess that makes you somewhat of a free agent, right? I mean, I can go with any team right now. Tell me the Cowboys are the team to go with.
Don't
the Cowboys.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Definitely don't.
Thanks, Sergeant Major Morgan. Sergeant Major Jefferson, how you doing this evening, Sergeant Major?
Oh, I'm doing outstanding. Good evening to NCOPD Live and everybody that's joining us right now. I'd just like to say, hey, thanks for this opportunity. Been wanting to get on here for some time. I'm glad we have the opportunity to get on here and share some good information with the soldiers who are out there listening and asking questions. As you stated earlier, I am the Army G-1 Sergeant Major up at the Pentagon. Been up here for a little over a year now. I was the HRC CSM prior to this, so looking forward to a great discussion tonight.
Okay. Originally from?
Yeah. So I'm originally from Brookfield, Ohio, and if you wanna talk about teams, my NFL team is Pittsburgh Steelers, and then the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The Ohio State Buckeyes. Yeah, okay. Well, everybody knows me. I'm from the great state of Texas. That's where I'm here from, and we gonna hook them horns, and we going with the Texans. Don't come on here talk about nothing about no Cowboys, because I don't want to ban any of my followers today. But definitely from the great state of Texas. So listen, before we even get started, we're just gonna throw out a disclaimer. This is a professional development platform for us to have an open dialogue with these two great professionals in their fields of expertise. Understand that we've all been in the Army more than a day. And as we may be talking now, policy may be getting ready to change. So understand that even though that you may pose a question tonight that they may not have an answer for yet, because policy hasn't been placed and hasn't been set forth in motion for them to answer that question. We still want you to facilitate your questions. If we cannot get to your questions, understand this, that both sergeant majors have agreed throughout the weekend that they will be able to come back and facilitate your questions as well. And then we also have an email that's going to go up throughout the platform that you can also submit your questions to the retention sergeant major as well. So before we even get started, my first question is going to go, I got to come to you, sergeant major, sergeant major Jefferson. Let's kick rumor control. There's something out there that people are talking about, a COVID-19 MOS promotion list. Can we address this situation?
Yes, indeed. There is no COVID-19 MOS promotion list. But what we did is, because we didn't want to disadvantage soldiers when it came down to professional military education, we did make some exceptions for soldiers in that case. So as long as soldiers going from staff sergeant to sergeant first class and sergeant first class to master sergeant, as long as they are otherwise eligible, and the only thing they need was their professional military education, we are going to waive that at this time. So those individuals will get promoted. And we're basically looking at the promotion list using an OML just as we would under normal circumstances. But we're not skipping anyone who has not completed their NCOPD, so professional development system. So that's how we're doing that. Now, the kick to that is some individuals think that since we promote them without that school, they're going to be able to maintain that school. No, I mean that promotion. Well, they're going to maintain that promotion, but the thing is by the time they hit the primary zone for the next rank, they have to have completed that PME that was required for that earlier promotion, or they will get a DA imposed bar to continue service. Okay. But negative as far as COVID-19 promotion list, there is not one.
So I think this was one of the questions that was posed on the HRC page today. Can you tell us why the 68 whiskeys and 42 alphas don't have promotion points this month?
That question right there, that's one I'm gonna have to get back to you on. I'm not for certain why they don't have promotion points this month, but I will definitely take that down. I just seen it pop up on the screen, and I'll get that answer back before the night's out or the weekend's out.
Okay.
Yep, I got it.
Okay. Coming to you, Sergeant Major Morgan. So I can't remember the last time I even got a bonus. What's going on with
you and me both.
Retention bonuses? Are there bonuses being given out right now for retention?
There are. Yeah. So we go through a quarterly SRB analysis. You know, the SRB being the selective retention bonus. Right now, if you go to the HRC website, as a matter of fact, the MILPER message, got it right here. 19-411 is the current SRB message. And on there, it will identify which MOSs, what critical skills we're offering a selective retention bonus for right now. To include bonuses for critical locations, such as Special Operations Command or 160th SOAR, 75th Ranger Regiment, and the like. So if you go to that MILPER message, look on there, identify what your MOS is, what your grade is, and if you're listed within that MILPER message, then there's an SRB available. There are some other rules that come into play. It does require a minimum 3-year commitment in order to receive a selective retention bonus. And you don't have to be within the re-enlistment window. The re-enlistment window right now is currently 15 months from a soldier's ETS date. So if you're within 15 months of your ETS date right now, your career counselor at your unit should be talking to you to include your chain of command about the options available to you for continued service, right? Depending on the option that you re-enlist for, if you were to re-enlist, let's say to change your MOS, if that new MOS that you're requesting to train into is on the SRB MILPER message, you can still receive a selective retention bonus. The only difference with that compared to a soldier that re-enlists in their current MOS is that the SRB is not paid to you until you've actually successfully completed whatever the training pipeline is that you're now about to go through. So once you complete training, you go back to your servicing career counselor and say, hey, here's my graduation certificate. I re-enlisted for this new bonus. And then obviously the SRB will be released. For those that are not within the re-enlistment window that come down on assignment, a headquarters Department of the Army imposed service remaining requirement. So let's say, for example, Morgan comes down on assignment to go to Europe for a 3-year tour. I don't have enough time on my current contract to complete that prescribed tour. I now have what's called or referred to as an SRR, a service remaining requirement. And again, if your MOS is on the SRB message and you're re-enlisting to meet the service remaining requirement, you can also receive that SRB.
Okay. So is there before we go to Master Sergeant Green, could you talk about how it's calculated, the bonuses?
Sure. Yeah, no, great question. The biggest misnomer out there is some soldiers think that if I re-enlist for 3 years, then I receive a bonus for 3 years. And if you go to the back of the SRB MILPER message, there's a tiered table. And all the MOSs are tiered everywhere from tier 1, which a minimum of $1,000, up to a tier 10, which maxes out at $81,000 on the current SRB message. However, if you look at the pay table on the very top, it's like a cross matrix, and on the top it'll identify in 12-month buckets the number of months of additionally obligated service. So AOS, or additionally obligated service, is critical when it comes to the computation of an SRB. I'll give you an example. If I am 12 months from my ETS date and I re-enlist for 3 years, the re-enlistment starts from the day that you re-enlist, right? So really your new ETS date is only going to be 24 months past your current ETS.
Gotcha.
So that's 24 months of additionally obligated service. And that's in a nutshell how it's calculated. So sometimes a soldier will look at the pay chart and say, okay, I'm re-enlisting for 36 months, cross-reference on the tier, boom, that's my bonus. That's not accurate. It's only based on the number of months of additionally obligated service. And your career counselor should be able to walk you through that and be able to counsel you exactly to the exact dollar on what you're eligible for.
Okay, thank you. Now, Sergeant Green.
Hey, Sergeant Major Jefferson. So we got some people asking questions about personnel who've completed drill sergeant school and recruiter school, and as far as getting ready to PCS. Could you shed some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're still currently in the stop move until 30 June. Although that policy is getting reviewed every 15 days, we have received guidance that any soldier who has completed drill sergeant or recruiter school and they are back at their losing unit waiting to PCS, they are authorized to move at this time. So earlier today, I did my quarterly call with the senior, the Corps, and the ACOM G-1 sergeant majors, and we had a discussion. And actually, right now, there's about 250 personnel who completed drill sergeant school who have an ETP that has been submitted from TRADOC through FORCECOM in order to authorize those soldiers to move. And then we have about 160 soldiers who completed recruiting school that USAREC has submitted ETPs on. So those individuals are going to be authorized to move here shortly so we can get them out there to that TRADOC organization so they can continue to train the soldiers the civilians that are coming into our formations.
Okay. Master Sergeant Green, I'm going to defer back to you. This looks like this may be Sergeant Major as well.
Sergeant Major, you can see it there. Can you see it on the screen?
Yes. Was that meant to be NCOES look like moving forward?
NCOES,
okay.
Roger that.
Yeah, so actually, we are definitely in uncertain times. TRADOC has been looking at ways to deliver virtual training anyway. So this COVID-19 pandemic that's amongst us has just, caused them to move a little bit faster and create that. So right now, there's some basic leader courses and a master leader course that are doing virtual training. The intent is still to get individuals back in the classroom, but TRADOC is in the process of developing how they're going to deliver virtual training in the future, and they're making a lot of headway on that, because under the times that we're in right now, they have no other option but to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sergeant Major Morgan, I have a question for you here. Is there a reason, or could you talk about AGRs? Not do they not get bonuses, or could you have some guidance on that?
So AGR falls under a different regulation that I'm not the proponent of. AGR falls under 140-11, which there is another SME that works with us and within the DMPM that actually handles the AGR program. But for my purposes, we're the proponent for 601-280, which is the active component retention program. So their bonus program is not something that I would see that would come through our office. So I'd probably be hesitant to answer a question on that, because I'm definitely not the SME when it comes to AGR.
Okay, so I have a question I do want to ask you, and I see another question from a soldier here. We talked about MACP. So how does MACP and EFMP impact a person's reenlistment options?
Okay, so let's tackle MACP first, right? Married Army Couples Program, which I'm actually a member of that program. Great program. So the soldier that moves into the reenlistment window, whoever's in the window first, can then sit down with their career counselor, and part of the eligibility screening of identifying what options the soldier is qualified for, one of those checks is to identify if the soldier is enrolled in MACP or EFMP. Normally what would happen if the soldier is not enrolled in one of those programs, if you came to me and you said you wanted to go to Fort Lewis, and I go into what we call the retain system, and there is an assignment available for you, I could lock you in locally and produce a contract for that requested assignment. When it comes to MACP and EFMP, those requests have to be submitted through the retain system from the career counselor. The point of entry for everything dealing with retention is going to be your career counselor. But it's put into the system and sent through a fancy email system that we have. It's called a hotline, up to the retention and reclassification branch within HRC. So if you look at the career counselor force, I'm just one of approximately 1,079 Sierras that are around the globe, at every command from battalion, obviously all the way up to HQDA. All 1,000 of us have access to that system where we can directly liaise with HRC within a push of a button, okay? And so what that counselor does will submit a hotline to the retention and reclassification branch. They'll be able to pull up the soldier on the system and enlisted distribution and assignment system up at ORB, identify what the spouse's MOS and grade and movement availability date is, and then they will work with the career branch or with the readiness division to identify if there's a vacancy for both of those soldiers at the gaining installation. If there is, then the one that is within the window will be locked in the retain system. Once the soldier re-enlists, the spouse is then placed on assignment. If they both happen to be within the window, then both are placed on assignment through the retain system. EFMP, a little bit different. It still goes to the retention and reclassification branch. They then take that request and put it into what they call the EP toolkit. And actually, probably Sergeant Major Jefferson knows a lot more about this than I, because he was the HRC CSM. But it goes into the EP toolkit, where that request is then sent over to Special Actions Branch, and then they will reach out to whatever is the gaining installation that you're requesting to PCS2 to identify if those EFMP services are available, whether they're medically related, educational, whatever the case may be. And one thing to keep in mind is there may be a vacancy for your MOS if you're within the EFMP program. They may need a 91 Bravo go to Fort Lewis. But when it comes down to EFMP, it's critical that we identify that the services are available for the dependents, right? Meaning if a child is, say, autistic, and they want to PCS to Fort Lewis, and the doctor who is there that is going to provide the care to this autistic dependent just so happens to be on assignment, is in a PCS in 2 months. Well, that's no help to the family. So and through the special actions branch, they will identify and do all the background, all the research on that to see if services are available. If they are, then we get the requisition, comes into the retained system, then we can produce a contract. So bottom out front, it's same as any other soldier. It's just there is a little bit more of a delay, especially with the EFMP if we're going to OCONUS.
Yeah, he's spot on with that. I just want to add something on the EFMP. We got to understand, that a lot of these installations, they may be able to provide those services to the family, but the other key to that is capabilities, because there may already be a lot of service members in that area that require those similar services. So they may not be able to bring on any new customers, for lack of a better word.
Okay, so I didn't even know that. So throwing back to you, Sergeant Major Stewart, is there
Can
any
I
talk
take
down the line
question? Can I take this question that's up here right now?
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm not trying to be funny, but MACP, Married Armies Couple Program, right? However, once the branch receives that request, we do reach out to our sister services and identify, hey, we have an Army soldier. Can we accommodate putting them at, at this location because it's close to Robins Air Force Base? Or like, take this area. Andrews Air Force Base is right up the street. We got Quantico, so you got the Marine Corps. You got the Navy Yard, so the Navy's here. So there is that discussion that goes forth between the retention branch and with our other services to see if we can accommodate putting the two together.
Okay. Thank you.
Sergeant Major Jefferson.
Yes.
So can we talk about special leave accrual, like with COVID and everything?
Yeah. So we worked with OSD and we got approval for soldiers to carry over leave. So soldiers will be able to carry over their leave up to 120 days, and that will expire in 2023. So soldiers, there's a lot of soldiers right now. I mean, there's civilians as well. We just got approval for this. Well, they're working the approval for the civilians to carry over some leave as well, because under the circumstances, we can't take leave. There are some people that are getting local leave and emergency leave on case by cases, but for the most part, our force is working, so we're accumulating days. So yeah, we're authorized to carry. We got the approval for special leave accrual.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we have one about ETP. Go ahead, Master Sergeant.
So here's another one for you, Sergeant Major.
Okay.
Why does it seem individual commands not under the EPT for movement? My gaining commander requested an EPT, and my losing commander says that they have no visibility on it.
Yeah. So basically, what happens is the gaining commands will request that ETP. They send the ETP up here to the Department of the Army, and it goes to the Director of Staff, and then those decisions are made by the Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. So yeah, the Vice Chief of Staff. So basically, their losing unit, the only way to have visibility on that is for those ones, either the G-1 or the S-1s to communicate. And then the means that we have with our all our G-1 personnel and S-1 personnel, we talk to them about the importance of maintaining that communication from unit to unit in order to keep the soldier and their family informed.
Okay. Sergeant Major Stewart, Sergeant Major Morgan, deck statements. And this may be a two-part question to both of you all, but deck statements and deferments. Can a person do a deck statement right now? How does that affect them within COVID if they're not wanting to PCS to a particular assignment? Does that still hurt them? And then also to you, Sergeant Major Jefferson, could we talk about the deferment process? Sergeant Major Morgan?
Okay. All right. So deck statement, declination of continued service statement, right? The only time this comes into play is if, first of all, if you're an initial term soldier, never re-enlisted before, no prior service, deck statement does not apply to you. You need to be at least a mid-career soldier or careerist. The other thing that comes into play is that there must be an HQDA imposed service remaining requirement, which is something we already talked about, a few minutes ago. So if that comes into play and you have made a conscious decision that you do not want to PCS to whatever whatever the assignment is. We'll use Europe again. If you don't have enough time in your current contract to complete that tour, then you can sign what's called a deck statement. Now, what does that do? Well, that removes you from the promotion point standing list, right? Prevents you from attaining any type of commissioning source. Prevents you from receiving any type of separation pay. What it does not preclude from happening is from the Army placing you onto a subsequent assignment that you can complete. So if I have 2 years left in the Army and I can't go to on a, you know, or say a year and 11 months left, I can't complete a 3-year tour in Europe and I sign a deck statement. That doesn't preclude the Army from PCSing me to a dependent restricted tour where I only need 12 months, right? Now, let me link this back to COVID, because we have had an exception to policy that was just signed, a blanket exception to policy that impacts the FY20 ECS population.
Okay.
So if you have a signed declination of continued service statement and you have an ETS date between now and 30 September, the Army has made a decision, because it goes back to the Army is a people business, right? The people are our center of gravity for the Army. And so understanding what is going on in the current environment with COVID-19, soldiers are now, their end state that they were expecting as they go through a normal transition out of the service, that is, in some cases, is now disappeared. That institution that they wanted to attend for college, no longer open for business. That job offer that was given to them is no longer an offer. And so look what happened today. Another 2.4 million citizens have now filed for unemployment, which puts us up to like 39 million within the last 9 weeks. So obviously there are opportunities on the outside that are starting to disappear. And that, like I said, that end state, that soldier's end state is rapidly changing. So going back to this being a people business, the Army understands that. The Army is still hiring, right? There are still options available to soldiers. And one of them, we identified that, first of all, the Army is only going to retain a quality soldier. That has not changed at all. There's no change in definition to what quality is. But a soldier who has made a decision to sign a declination of continued service statement is basically is a volunteer who agreed to serve, but has told the Army, when I get to the end of this contract, I'm going to go my way. The Army's going to go theirs. Now, faced with the environment that we're in right now, the Army is an exception to policies. Those soldiers, because they're still quality soldiers. Just because you sign a deck statement doesn't make you any less quality than a soldier who's still continuing to serve. Right. But so if you have an ETS date within fiscal year 20, so between now and 30 September, and you choose to extend or re-enlist, you can do so if you were otherwise qualified. So if the only disqualifying factor right now was the deck statement, that's no longer a disqualifying factor. If you extend, you can still extend. Deck statement still stays in place, but if you re-enlist, we will automatically remove that for you. Okay. Because you've obviously made another commitment back to the Army. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Makes sense. And as far as some of the deferments?
Yeah, so the deferment process, the individual will have to submit a 4187 through their chain of command and send it up to HRC in order to see if HRC will approve it. We have offered up deferments and deletions in some cases, depending on the strength and the priority of the assignment that they're going on, in order to allow soldiers and families to stay at their current location based off of everything that's going on in the world right now. But they could always do that. What I would recommend is that soldiers reach out to their branch managers at HRC first, kind of talk to them, let them know that they are considering submitting a deferment or a deletion, and kind of get a idea of the possibility of it getting approved based off of the things I mentioned before.
Okay.
Can I throw one caveat in there, Sergeant Hicks?
Yeah.
All right. For those soldiers out there that are on a re-enlistment assignment, if you're requesting to defer it or to waive it or to delete it, anything dealing with that re-enlistment assignment, take it to the career counselor, right? Yes, it still has to go through the first 05, I think it is, in order to sign the 4187. the normal chain is it would go to the S1, it would be routed through the S1 channel to HRC. But once HRC receives it, if they identify it's a re-enlistment assignment, it'll get kicked back. It'll go back to the unit, and then it has to go back to the career counselor. So it saves yourself some time. If it's a re-enlistment assignment, take it over to the 79 Sierra. They'll shoot it up through retain to RB, and then they'll be able to handle it. Because those requisitions, obviously the unique thing with those requisitions, there's a binding contract behind it. So only that branch has the capability to delete it, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep. Great point.
Sergeant Major Jefferson. So the short skinny on this one, from what I've read, is that there is no Sergeant Major slot, and this individual has received their board files telling them to validate their board files, and their MOS basically ends at Mass Sergeant. So they're asking, why are they receiving the board file if there's no potential for them to move to the next pay grade?
Okay. Yeah, this is one I'm gonna have to take back to HRC. It's an automated system. It filters soldiers out for the next rank based off of the criteria, data rank, time and service, and things of that nature. And if that soldier meets that criteria, they're gonna automatically get populated and receive an email under that. So what I will do, I'll talk with HRC and see if there's a way that we could filter out MOSs that do not have a progressive level into the sergeant major ranks or whatever it may be.
Okay. I'm going to defer back to Master Sergeant Green.
Okay.
Roger that. So, Sergeant Major, we also had in here, we talked about stop movements. Is there anything specifically other than the information that we currently have that you can add to the stop movement to clarify some things for us?
Yeah. So like I said, June 30th right now is our date. But when that guidance was given, they said that it would be reviewed every 15 days. So that's being reviewed. But I also stated that on a case by case, we're doing exceptions to policy to allow soldiers to move. If in fact it ends on 30 June and we start moving the Army the way we were moving it on the 1st of July, those individuals who have a report date within 30 days, they will be able to go to their travel office, transportation office, and schedule their transportation if it's CONUS to CONUS or within CONUS. If they're OCONUS, they will be able to make those transportation appointments about 60 days out. This whole COVID thing has, there was about 48,000 soldiers that were scheduled to move between March and September. Now what we're doing is we're prioritizing that, and there may be some individuals that may not need to move based off of the priorities and things like that. So I think we've narrowed the number down to about 28,000 PCSs that are going to have to be conducted. So we're working with Transcom, working with the Army G4, working with AMC, the Army Material Command, to ensure that we have the capacity in the moving industry in order to move these families and things like that. The other significant thing that soldiers may see is on their PCS orders. They may be able to depart up to 20 days prior to their departure date, and that's all going to be based off of when the moving companies can pick up their household goods and things of that nature. And then on the backside of that, they're going to have about 30 days additional to receive their household goods. So there's going to be about a 50-day window in there that we never have done before with a report date, just to account for the large capacity of soldiers that we got to move. Now, I'm only talking about numbers that affect the Army. We got to remember this also affected the other services, and they use the same moving industry that we use as well. But that's pretty much the extent of it right there. Go ahead.
That was going to be my next question, and I think that leads into the next one on here about the ID cards and the extension of the ID cards as well. Yes.
So soldiers and family members during this time, their ID cards expired, certificates expired, and things of that nature. So in order to cut down the amount of traffic in our DEER sections, we have extended those. So those individuals, for the dependents, they will still be able to utilize their benefits, go to the commissary and things of that nature with the ID card that they currently have, even though it's expired. Now, for us, as far as our CAT cards, if our certificates are expired, we are able to get our certificates renewed now. So yeah, that's going to carry on. And just like I stated earlier, you know, it's uncertain times. We don't know when things are going to get back to somewhat being normal, or our new normal, we should say. So as we continue to move to the right and days go by, those extensions, those ETPs, all this guidance is going to adjust, maybe go further, be extended longer, or it may be shortened depending upon what COVID decides to do. Over.
Okay. Jumping back to you, Sergeant Morgan. So I kind of want to backtrack real quick about reenlistment. So we have a question here. If I reenlisted for Army training and my training was canceled due to COVID, but my follow-on assignment is still there, what are my options?
All right. So Robbie Rollo, also a career counselor. So I hope he knows the answer to this question. I'm going to put him on the spot. So all they're going to do is send up we have a category up in the retention branch called Val-Reno, where we validate or we renegotiate contracts. Okay. So in this situation here, obviously the training seat was canceled. That assignment is still out there, just so, you know, for a tracking mechanism. And probably what you're going to see is you're going to see the branch at HRC, and I don't want to get ahead of HRC here. Usually what they do in a situation like this, when there's a block of soldiers that need to be rescheduled for training, they will reschedule that whole block at one time. So that's to alleviate work at the unit level, you know, and to prevent sending up individual soldier requests. So that's a due out to me. I'll get back with the retention branch. I'm sure they already have a plan in place to reschedule these soldiers, and then the follow-on assignment will be adjusted accordingly based on whatever the new graduation date is. Okay.
Master Sergeant Green? Oh, actually, this goes back to Farm Major Morgan. Mr. Cameron says, good evening. Can a soldier that ETS beyond 2020-0930 can they apply for ETP for the DCSS?
So can they apply? Yes. Any soldier with a declination of continued service statement can request to have it removed. That process, and that's nothing new. That has nothing to do with COVID. That process has already been in place for as long as I can remember. But what's unique right now is for the FY20 soldier, is a blanket exception to policy already given by the Army G-1.
Okay. So
if your ETS date is October 1st or later, the answer is yes, and get with your career counselor, and they already know exactly how they submit the request and who it goes to. It's done by a 4187, a simple soldier's request, and then that'll go up to the retention reclass branch for final adjudication.
Okay. I believe we have one for you, Master Sergeant.
Okay. Here we go, Sergeant Major. They got one for you. Is there any guidance on what soldiers can do about family care plans for the current COVID situation? What are the chances of shortening the DROs for compassionate reassignments for Europe back to the States to be closer to families?
Yeah, so that's two different questions. Leave it up there for a minute. So on the family care plans, we understand the situation with COVID. Early on when this happened, there were some units, some organizations telling their soldiers that they had to implement their family care plans, but due to the fact of traveling, being impacted by this, some of them could not do that. So the guidance, this is one of those things where you don't want to lead from the Pentagon. you have leaders on the ground who can make that leadership call and understand the current situation and maybe put that individual on some type of leave or something like that until they can fix something and get something where it doesn't require a person to fly to assist them to take care of their kids. So that's about all the guidance that we have given from the Pentagon, because that is leaders on the ground. That's their decision, and we got to allow them to lead. With the compassionate reassignment, I'm gonna respond to this the way I understand it, because what I think is the soldiers asking me, they have a compassionate reassignment approved, and they're overseas right now, and they're requesting to come back to the States to be closer to their families. In that case, if you're overseas and you're requesting a compassionate back to the States, then your DEROS does not matter. Once that compassionate is approved, then they give you a new date as far as when you can return from overseas. And to Oscar Juan, if I did not answer your question properly, please clarify that question for us. Over.
Okay. I'm going to jump back to you, Sergeant Major Morgan. So with the in relates to retention and the whole COVID-19, how has COVID-19 impacted the Army's retention numbers?
Frankly, very positively. We have seen an uptick in retention. Retention this fiscal year is stronger this year than we've seen in the previous 3. So, and I would say that's not only attributed to the population that ETS is within this fiscal year, but also within fiscal year 21, we've seen an increase. So right now, we, as an Army, we're 17% ahead of where we should be today. So obviously that tells me a couple of things. It's not just about throwing money out there, and it's not just about re-enlistment options. That tells me that what's going on at the unit level, at the tactical level, the commanders and leaders are actually engaging their soldiers. Career counselors are out there counseling their soldiers, and that soldiers are being educated on the options available to them. At the end of the day, this is what it comes down to. Yeah, we do have goals, right? Anybody can go into 601-280 and identify what the goals are. 1, support end strength, not only for the active component, but also for the reserve components. Number 3, force alignment, putting the right face into the right space, right? I'm sure everybody's seen in and out calls. They identify which MOSs are under strength, balanced, or over strength. And that's one of the mechanisms that we use to identify, if a soldier can or cannot reclassify into a different skill, right? But at the end of the day, those are all components to the retention program. But it comes down to that human factor, and it comes down to that trust that is established between the leadership and the soldier, that open dialogue, that open communication, and that educating soldiers on what the Army offers, what this profession offers, and having a frank discussion also with the soldier to identify what that individual soldier is offering the institution, right? If you are performing ahead of your peers, you should know that. If you're not performing with your peer group, likewise, you should know that. And that's one of the responsibilities of the commander through the Commander's Retention Program and through BASD counseling is to identify that to the soldier. And at the end of the day, the soldier is going to make an educated decision, knowing what the Army is going to offer them, and them doing their own homework, and also through SFL and through the Transition Assistance Program to identify what is available to them on the outside. At the end of the day, if the Army and the soldiers' needs, wants, and desires meet, that's where reenlistment takes place. But even if a soldier decision is not to continue within the active component and to transition into the reserve components or into the individual ready reserve, at the end of the day, we thank each one of them likewise. And the ultimate intent is that they're going to go back to their communities and be more productive citizens based on the Army values and what they've learned and their technical training that they've learned from serving this country.
Okay. Green.
Sergeant Major Johnson, this is a tough one here. So Jefferson, I'm sorry, Sergeant Jefferson, this is a tough one here. So this individual is asking, they're saying it's very disheartening when people they get selected for assignments that they're not qualified for. And, they're stating that if they have went to behavioral health, that they're permanently disqualified. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what they put there. So if you could debunk some of that stuff and guide us through that, it would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, as far as being DA selected, HRC, the assignment managers, I mean, they're looking at your file. They look at the strength of your record based on what you've done over your career, the schools you've gone to, and how well you perform. And that's how the branches recommend you to the nominative branch in order to go drill sergeant or recruiter. They do not have the luxury of seeing any medical history or anything like that. So they would notify the individuals at that time to let them know that they are being considered to go drill sergeant or recruiter. But then, they have to go through the investigation criteria, the background screening. They got to go through the behavioral health screening and things of that nature. And that questionnaire or whatever could disqualify the soldier. As far as being permanently disqualified because you've gone to behavioral health once, that's something that I know in the past we've had issues with that, but that's something that I need to look into. And it's also on a case by case because it depends on how severe your case is. So there may be individuals that have gone to behavioral health for something that was, not considered too serious based off of the healthcare provider that they've seen, who may be able to attend. But if you've gone and you've had something where they think that you need to continue to receive care or something like that, it may cause you to be disqualified from that. But I got the name, and I'll definitely I could look into your case if you want. If you want to send me an email, I'm on global wardell.jefferson .mil@army.mil. If you want to, at mail.mil. So if you want to send me an email, I could look into your case specifically. Over.
Okay. I'm going to come back to Sergeant Major Morgan. So right now, are there any new policies that are on the table that our Army is looking at as far as retention, or is there any policies and procedures that have already been signed into place that are in relation to retention that can benefit soldiers at this current position we're in?
Yes. March 25th, we released what's referred to as the ARCO extension, which is the response to the COVID outbreak extension. So what we did, it's kind of like a preemptive strike, if you will. We looked at what are some of the issues that our soldiers could potentially face with COVID, and which I'm not going to go back and say it over again, but as far as school and education, or school and employment on the outside. And then we took a look at the policies that we have in place currently for our soldiers. And I would tell you that the options are available now there are more options available today than there were years ago. All right. Especially in line with the chief's #1 priority, which is your listeners, right? The soldiers, our people, is offering them more stabilization options. And that's already taken place with my predecessor prior to me by offering stabilization by way of an extension. But what was missing from the kit bag was an extension that was less than 12 months, because all the options start for re-enlistment at least a minimum of 2 years. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, depending on what your retention control point is and other rules that apply. And then there's the continued service extension, minimum of 12 months up to a maximum of 23, that also affords stabilization to the soldier. But as it directly relates to COVID, there was nothing that was a temporary safety net between 0 and 12. And so what we did was we released the ARCO extension, response to COVID outbreak, that allows a soldier who's within 6 months of their ETS date the ability to extend for a minimum of 3 months up to 11. If you're going to do more than 11 months, then obviously you would exercise one of the other options that's already available.
Okay.
And I've already received some questions. Well, what if I wanted to do 2 months? Why a minimum of 3? So that there's a couple of reasons for that. And number one reason is the closer you get to your ETS date, you run a higher risk of falling off the pay system, right? Because eventually the transition center, they're monitoring your ETS date, and you get within a certain window based on their local policy, they're going to put a transaction in the system saying, hey, we're expecting Morgan to ETS here in another 60 days. If some type of retention action takes place after that transaction has been put in the system, it takes a little bit of work with the transition center to remove it, because otherwise you're going to drop off the pay system. So 3 months, that keeps you out of that bubble where you could potentially be at risk of falling out the pay system. And then, like I said, up to 11.
Okay.
But now another thing that we've done is to adapt to this new operating environment that we find ourselves in now, is the use of virtual reenlistments and digital signatures. We have used digital signatures in the past. Anybody who's come through MEPS lately through the recruiting station, we've all seen it with the biometric signatures. But what we did not offer in the past was the ability to use a digital signature on the DD Form 4 contract. So we pushed that out the door, so that you obviously, to maintain social distance, you can sign this within the privacy of your own house with your family or wherever you reside, and sign that contract, and then conduct an actual reenlistment ceremony virtually through whatever, Zoom, StreamYard, Facebook Live, however you choose to do it.
Okay.
So, it's all about adapting to the environment that we're in. And I tell you, this institution is definitely known for doing that.
You said operational environment. You took me back to my SGL days. However, Sergeant Major Morgan, I do have a follow-on question for you here, from Mr. Robert Ross. He says, I'm MACP soldier who is stuck Oconus, and my wife is CONUS. Her report date is currently 30 days after mine's to a CONUS location. Is there a process to get our report dates to match?
So I would need a little bit more information with this, because one thing that comes to mind is this deferred travel? Did Robert Ross, maybe you already submitted your request and it was deferred travel. I mean, due to housing or whatever the case may be, sent the soldier there individually. But yes, you could, same like any other soldier, submit a 4187 through the chain of command, take it back, like I said before, to the career counselor, because even if you didn't reenlist, even if that reenlistment assignment, let me back up, even if that assignment is not in your contract, it is still a reenlistment requisition because it's attached to a reenlistee, because a MACAP re-up, right? And so, you can still submit that request to defer it, and it would go up to, there's other things, there's a lot, like I said, it's a lot more that could be in the background here, right? I don't know how much time on station the spouse has. So maybe the spouse isn't eligible to move. Maybe the spouse is an instructor. Maybe the spouse has an AEA end date that prevents the soldier from moving at this time. So there may be more to play in there that I'm not aware of. But yeah, writ large, sure. 4187, you can request it. It'll go up to the branch, and they'll look at all those factors to identify if you're available for movement and if you can move into the other position.
So, Major, do you have something to add on to that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he handled that very well. And basically, what it boils down to, like he said, there's a lot of underlying factors that could contribute to this happening. But at my first look at this, I would tell that soldier to talk to their branch manager and see if they can get their report date adjusted, barring that they meet the criteria to get it adjusted. The branch manager may do it, or they may say, hey, submit a 4187 through your chain of command requesting to leave a little earlier, and then they would take care of it.
Okay.
Cool.
My Sergeant.
Good.
Cool. Tracking Oscar 1. Good.
So we had a question earlier, Sergeant Major. There was an individual that was trying to, was at 19 years, wanted to retire. They got orders to go to Fort Drum, I believe, and they were asking what options did that individual have. I'm assuming that they haven't dropped their retirement packet yet.
Yeah, so those are tough ones. I dealt with this a lot when I was the HRC CSM. Soldiers say, hey, when I get to that year or that 19-year mark, I'm going to drop my retirement. So please don't put me on assignment. But I will tell you the truth of the matter is there's individuals that say that, and HRC has left them in place. And you look up, and 3 years later, that soldier's still in the Army. So the only way to avoid that is, first of all, like I tell everybody, talk to your managers. If the managers can avoid moving you, they will. But if there's a reason that they have to move you based off of priorities, strengths and things of that nature, then they're going to move you. And at the end of the day, if you're going to drop your retirement, you have 19 years in, you're retirement eligible, you can submit your retirement. Go ahead and submit it. But other than that, the only option that they have is to talk to their manager and request to be left in place.
Okay. I have a question that and Sergeant Major, I would like my question to be posed to the Chief of Staff and the Sergeant Major of the Army. Is it any way possible in the near future? I know when we hold town halls now, and I got it, everybody's, and I dare not be naive. I understand Chief of Staff of the Army, Sergeant Major of the Army, they're always going. Is it possible at one time that we can get the Chief of Staff of the Army and the Sergeant Major of the Army on the G-Shop leadership? At least, if nothing, that's not the Deputy Chief of Staff, but that Sergeant Major in one room. So that way, if we have a G-1 question that coincides with G-4 as far as logistics and moving, that we can all get them all on the same panel at the same time practicing social distancing. So I do know that that's something that somebody wanted to ask, and it would be great that if we have that whole panel of leadership, that we can ask those questions, and the Chief of Staff can defer to the G4 as well. If you would pass the question along.
Yeah, that's definitely that's a great point. That's something that honestly we do that for the pre-command course. Unfortunately, it's for battalion, brigade commanders, and battalion and brigade CSMs. But the G staff does go down to Fort Leavenworth for every class, and we do this for them. We do a briefing in the morning, and then for about an hour, and then we break out in the classrooms, and they get the opportunity to ask us questions like this. So you're exactly right.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, Sergeant Major, how is COVID-19 affecting PCSing in regards to the enlisted manning cycles for everyone?
Yeah, right now, I mean, everything's kind of on hold. So basically, what's going to happen is when we come out of this thing, HRC is working right now, like I said, with Transcom, Army Material Command, and the G4, as well as units, in order to lay out how we're going to move individuals. So individuals that were scheduled to move in May, now they may move in July, like between the 15th and the 31st of July. Individuals that were moving in July may move in August or September. But what we're doing is we know the limit that the moving industry has by month. And what we have to do is we got to schedule that amount of moves within that month. And we're basically using a first in, first out kind of scenario. But we're also looking at priorities as well, because just because I had you on assignment before COVID to move you from Fort Bragg to Fort Carson does not necessarily mean I had to move you, because I could leave the individual that was at Fort Carson that you were going to replace. I can leave them there and leave you at Fort Bragg, and it's kind of like a domino effect. But that's not always going to be the case, because we still have trade-off formations that we have to fill. We have to send individuals to go be drill sergeants and recruiters and things of that nature. So we just kind of have to look at that and see when we will be able to do that, how it's going to work out. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of work going into this to ensure that we get it right when we go out. when we get out of COVID, and to ensure that we're not just moving people just to move.
Okay. Roger that. So we have one here about talent management, Sergeant Major. With talent management boards, will the RCP fade away?
And before you answer, Sergeant Major, I know that's one of the points I wanted to highlight with Sergeant Major Morgan. Once Sergeant Major Jefferson is done, could you come and follow on and talk about the RCP piece, if you don't mind, Sergeant Major Morgan?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the evaluation boards, we have a number of things that we're trying to do with those boards, and one of them, which is the last thing, we are trying to kind of do away with the RCPs. But the deal is we are still working through the mechanics of that. I would say if that takes place, it's probably going to be around FY 22-23 timeframe, because we're still working through the mechanics on how we're going to do that. And it's not going to be a free for all that you could just stay in the Army as long as you want. It's going to be one of those things that as long as you're performing and there's a valid slot available for you, you will be able to continue to serve. And like I said, we are working to implement that FY 22-23 timeframe. Go ahead, Sergeant Major Morgan.
So in regards to the RCP, this would go back to one of the disclaimers at the beginning of this, right? Policies always subject to change. Are those discussions going on? Yes, but the discussions are related to completely removing RCPs, changing RCPs, or doing nothing to them, right? So, like Sergeant Major Jefferson said, those mechanics are being looked at. There is a task force that is comprised of talent management task force that looks at things such as this. But I would say right now that there's no decision right now to change that. Can it change in the future? Sure, it could. But that's still an ongoing, still in the planning phase. Because obviously the last thing we want to do is rush to a decision that's going to ultimately negatively impact the force, that's obviously not the business that we're in.
Okay. So just real quick, shout out to my NCOPD live team. They're working behind the scenes in different remote locations, but they just shot me a message that someone sent through the NCOPD live inbox. Is there a reason that the TPUs do not follow the same promotion system as the active component and AGR soldiers? I don't who would take that question.
Yeah, I mean they have different regulations that they fall under. With the move to this evaluation board, we have worked a lot with all components in order to ensure that we can try to get our systems as similar as possible. But there's just some things that we cannot get completely in line with one another. But I will tell you, going forward, you will probably see some changes as far as now that we have IPSA coming on and different systems and things of that nature. We will be able to get people more in line with one another and going forward with how we do things. But that's really the biggest difference right now is that we follow different regulations and we use different systems, and some things just can't be done the same based off of those issues that we have. Over.
Green.
All right. So we got one here about STEP, Sergeant Major. Is it true that STEP is having a policy change coming out soon? Can someone elaborate on the changes?
Right now, we're still STEP is working. The biggest thing that we have right now is getting individuals to school, but the problem is not seats. A lot of it is some of us just not being able to go based off of units thinking they need you for missions and things of that nature, or you're injured. But ultimately, we're going to continue to use STEP. Like right now, the only change that we made was based off of this COVID-19 is that we're going to promote individuals who do not have their PME completed at this particular time, because it's not the soldier's fault that they did not go to PME. It's just the fact that due to COVID-19, we're not running any classroom courses, and they have not gone virtual yet. But once TRADOC turns the corner and they find a way to bring them up virtual, or we get back in the classroom, then that change that we made will go away. Over.
Sir Major, I just got another question in as well. So with the deferments and stuff that's going to happen based off of COVID-19 and the supply and demand, and y'all picking who needs to go first and all of that stuff, what should people expect to see? Should they expect to like start having to put in 4187s to defer those dates, or is that going to automatically happen? Like how do we see that going down?
Yeah, so the only ones that need to submit a 4187 are those individuals that want to defer the actual date that they're going to receive. So once they're told, hey, you're going to PCS at this time, if they want to defer that, then they need to submit a 4187. If they want to request a deletion and stay in place for another 12 months or so, they have to submit a 4187 for that. But as far as being stop moved and you missed your report date already, that's going to happen automatically. HRC is going to adjust those report dates. That's going to be in the system, and MPD is going to cut new orders for those soldiers. Over.
Okay. Listen, I want to thank both of you. I do see a few more questions coming in, but I do not want to take you all's night away from family as well. And I hope that the followers and listeners understand this. We're gonna just do real quick. If it's a specific point that you would like to talk about that we haven't highlighted, or if it's something that you want to reiterate or something that we talked about, and then we'll go into closing remarks. And so, Sergeant Major Morgan, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would just add, as a soldier, do yourself, help yourself by talking to your career counselor, right? Every unit has a career counselor that services that unit. A lot of them are co-located right there at the battalion level, the battalion headquarters. They should be very easy to find. Take time, go down and see them. They should be coming to see you also. But they are a trusted intermediary that works for the command and also works for you, the soldier, right? That is their job to educate you on the options available to you, right? Do the smart thing, educate yourself, know what the Army's offering, know what this profession offers before you make a decision to get out, right? Times are tough out there right now. I'm not saying that it's impossible to make it out there. I'm not saying that at all. But this institution is a fine institution that has a lot of benefits and a lot of options available that could accommodate your needs, wants, and desires. And your main point of entry into that is that career council, that 79 Sierra. That's all they do. That is their sole reason of soldiering right now, is to take care of soldiers. So thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity coming on here, Sergeant Hicks, Sergeant Green. It's been a fantastic dialogue.
I appreciate it. Sergeant Major Jefferson?
Yeah, I would tell you, an hour, you think an hour is a long time, but believe it or not, that time went by pretty quick, and there's just so much information to put out. And I like I said, once again, I appreciate being on here, but my advice to all of you out there listening is, hey, ask questions. There's a lot of policies, there's a lot of guidance that's put out there, but at the end of the day, we are here to take care of soldiers and families. And the only way that we know that there's a scenario that has not been covered by the policies and guidance that we put out is by you bringing it up and you asking, your leadership, or you reaching out to your S1 or reaching out to us and just telling us your situation, and let us work through trying to figure out a way to work through that for you and your family. Talk to your assignment managers at HRC. They're there to assist you. They're there to provide you professional advice on, how you can navigate through your military career and best set you up for success to make you competitive for promotions and things of that nature. But this stuff is all very important. We're soldiers just like you. We've been where you are. We've had some of the same questions, and now we have platforms like this one where we can pay it forward and we can have these discussions and answer questions openly and things like that. So just don't think that you're in this by yourself. Don't be afraid to ask the question. don't be afraid to reach out because that's the only way you're going to get the assistance that you need.
Okay. Masson Green.
First off, I want to thank Sergeant Hicks for allowing me to come on here and be a part of this today. This is very special to me. I also wanted to go ahead and let everybody know tomorrow at on Freestyle Every Day for Everybody, we're gonna have a special coming on at about 1900 on the East Coast, 1800 Central Standard Time, and 1600 on the West Coast. Of our first session of Unmunit, we'll have a whole female panel. They're going to put some great things out. Please come and hear what our sisters have to say. This is going to be powerful. So please don't miss it. Once again, thank y'all, and I appreciate you letting me be a part of this.
My last comments is that I want to say to Sergeant Major Jefferson and Sergeant Major Morgan, I really do appreciate you all taking the opportunity to come out and have open dialogue and take those questions that the soldiers down here at this level are asking. I know it's kind of hard to get leadership up at the echelon where you are to come on and talk about it, but I do appreciate the both of you taking the time out to come and ask those questions, as well as I'm extending an open invitation that if new policy comes out, that you all decide that, hey, this is what the force needs. We all have each other's numbers now, and we're connected through social media. Feel free to reach out and say, hey, this is something that came out, and I'm also locked in with Sergeant Major Clark as well. If either one of you can't be on the show, outstanding professional, has been on the show twice. That I'm open to you all coming out, and any other G shop that's up at the Pentagon is welcome to come on to the NCOPD Live platform. One of the reasons why I did this is because it gives a pipeline for tactical leaders and tactical soldiers at this level to say, hey, I actually talked to my G-1 Sergeant Major. I actually talked to the most senior NCO when it comes to retention in the Department of the Army. So that's one of the reasons I did this, to show that just because you're a staff sergeant doesn't mean that you can't reach out to your leadership. So I truly appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart for taking the time to come out and be a part of NCOPD Live this evening.
Absolutely. I just like to say one last thing. I applaud you for having this platform and being the voice and getting this word out to soldiers. And definitely, I'll take you up on that offer. I'm definitely looking at doing this again. Like you said, probably get some of the other G staff sergeant majors to come out. But in our world, I'll tell you, in the G1 world, things change every day. There's, like you said up front, stuff is probably changing right now, and we'll find out when we get back to the office or get emails tonight. But at the end of the day, we have to do things like this to communicate and get the word out to soldiers. But for the soldiers that are listening, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people that are not listening right now or not on this. Don't just keep this information to yourself either. Go out there, spread the word, get your battle buddies, bring a buddy next time. Tell them to get on this thing and bring their questions so that everybody can be well informed. But hey, thanks again. It was a pleasure, and I honestly enjoyed this.
Okay. Sergeant Major, did you have something else on Morgan? Sergeant Major Morgan, I thought you were going to say something.
No, I would just reiterate exactly what Sergeant Major Jefferson said. You know, you providing this platform. You just mentioned something before about tactical leaders getting this information. And I think that's a good way of putting it. You're connecting that tactical environment to the strategic environment, right? And now there's that conduit in between the two. And that's exactly what this platform is doing. Gives us the opportunity to put information out and receive feedback by way of questions that I tell you, we don't know the answer to every question. And things like this, we get some questions that pop up that make us think, and hey, maybe we need to look at go back to the policy drawing board and see if there's something else that we can offer soldiers, especially in my business, to keep them in the Army. Right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is another great session of NCOPD Live, hosted by yours truly, the professional SGL. Once again, thanks to our panel for being a part of today's show. Our special guest co-host, Master Sergeant Green, and the G1 Sergeant Major Jefferson, and the senior retention Sergeant Major for the Army. As we always, before we end NCOPD Live, if you see something wrong and you fail to do something about it, then you have just created a new standard. And at the end of the day, their issue is never with you, but their issue is always with the standard. This is yours truly, Staff Sergeant Hicks, with my special guest signing off. Have a good weekend.
Oh,
Have a good night.